The void of space stretched endlessly, dotted with stars that shimmered like distant fireflies. Commander Zyretha of the Calther fleet hovered above the uncharted asteroid belt, her massive ship a dark silhouette against the cosmic canvas. She had been trained for decades, battling pirates, rival empires, and even merciless space phenomena. Yet something about this sector made her uneasy. Reports had mentioned a lone human pilot who had survived skirmishes that would have destroyed even her most skilled officers. Zyretha was curious, but more importantly, she was cautious. Her eyes scanned the instruments, searching for any hint of this human vessel. It was difficult. Human ships were small, often unarmored, and equipped with unpredictable technology. To the Calther, humans were pests, clever but fragile, and their survival often seemed more like luck than skill. And yet rumors persisted. Humans were fearless in the face of death, capable of impossible acts, and somehow always surviving. The sensors blinked. A small blip appeared, moving with a confidence that startled Zyretha. She leaned forward in her command chair, narrowing her eyes. The ship was old, scarred by battle and patched in ways that would make a Calther engineer gasp. Yet it moved as if it belonged in the vacuum of space, gliding effortlessly between debris. Zyretha's first instinct was to attack. Every part of her training screamed that the human was a threat, but something stopped her. There was no aggressive movement, no attempt to evade detection. This human approached openly, as if he were walking into her territory without fear. That was unusual. She initiated a communication channel, her voice steady and authoritative. "Identify yourself." The human's reply was calm, almost casual. "I'm Captain Elias Trent of the starship Dauntless. I mean no harm. I come to talk." Zyretha blinked. Talk. She had expected defiance, threats, or even cowardice, but not words of diplomacy. She narrowed her eyes and said, "You are in Calther space. You are alone. What reason could you have to speak with me instead of surrendering?" Elias smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it through the transmission. "I don't believe surrender solves problems. Perhaps you feel the same way once you hear me out." Zyretha was suspicious, of course. Humans had a reputation for cunning, and she could not ignore that his words might hide a trap. But there was something genuine in his tone. He was calm, deliberate, and unafraid. That unshakable composure unsettled her more than weapons ever could. "Very well," she said. "Prepare for boarding. I will see if you are as fearless as rumors say." Elia's ship shivered slightly as it entered the gravity well of her vessel's approach corridor. Zyretha observed every maneuver, noting his skill. Every pilot in the galaxy would have panicked navigating this debris field, but he moved with precision and confidence. He was either very skilled or very lucky. And she knew the universe had no room for luck when skill could be measured. As his ship docked, Zyretha ordered a team of Calther soldiers to be ready. Their weapons were lethal, and their instincts sharpened from countless battles. Yet when the airlock hissed and opened, revealing Elias standing there unarmed, Zyretha felt a strange hesitation. His presence was calm, even inviting. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect she hadn't expected. "I am here to talk," Elias said again, "not to fight." Zyretha's instincts screamed at her. Attack. This could be a ruse. She raised a hand, signaling her soldiers to stay alert, yet she found herself intrigued. Why would a human offer parley when they could flee or fight? She motioned for her soldiers to stand down slightly. "Speak then," she commanded, "but know this, any sign of aggression and you will not survive." Elias nodded. "I understand." For the next hour, they exchanged words across the conference chamber. He spoke of distant planets, of human history, of their capacity to survive impossible odds. He spoke not of conquest, but of understanding. Zyretha listened, skeptical at first, but gradually she began to see something different. Humans, he explained, were not just cunning. They were creative, resilient, and capable of compassion even in the harshest conditions. "You have lived through battles that would have ended many other species," Elias said. "Your skill is remarkable, Zyretha. But there is more to survival than strength. There is strategy, there is trust, there is honor." Zyretha frowned. Trust, honor, these are weaknesses, not strengths. And yet, as she studied him, she saw a quiet confidence that was neither arrogance nor fear. It was something different, something alien. Suddenly, alarms blared across her ship. Sensors picked up a hostile fleet approaching from the outer rim. Zyretha's heart raced, not from fear, but from excitement. Here was the test. She had expected to face the human in a duel, a challenge of survival. Instead, she now faced the choice of working with him or against him against a far greater threat. "Elias," she said, turning toward him, "you speak of honor and strategy. Now you will have to prove it." He smiled calmly, unshaken by the approaching fleet. "I was hoping for a challenge." Together they ran simulations, plotting escape routes and defensive maneuvers. Zaretha was astounded. Where her fleet relied on sheer firepower, Elias used ingenuity, timing, and creativity. He suggested using the asteroid field to their advantage, not just as cover, but as a weapon. By guiding hostile ships into unstable debris, they could disable an entire squadron without firing a single missile. Zaretha's respect grew with each passing moment. She had expected a fragile, reckless creature, but she found a mind that could rival her own, perhaps surpass it. Hours passed as they worked, their combined strategy creating a delicate balance of offense and defense. Zaretha found herself thinking differently, questioning long-held beliefs about humans. They were more than survivors. They were adapters, problem solvers, and unlikely heroes. Finally, the hostile fleet arrived within range. The simulation ended. Zaretha's heart raced as she prepared for real combat. But now, instead of dread, she felt anticipation. With Elias at her side, she didn't just have a partner, she had an advantage she had never considered. The human looked at her and said simply, "Ready?" Zaretha nodded. "Ready?" In that moment, she realized the truth. Facing a human, she had expected death. But what she found instead was a chance, an ally who could change everything. The stars shimmered as the first shots rang out in the distance, but Zaretha no longer faced them alone. And for the first time in her career, she wondered if the universe was about to teach her a lesson she never expected. The Calther Command Center buzzed with alarms and red lights as Zaretha and Elias navigated the asteroid field together. The hostile fleet approached, massive ships bristling with weapons, their engines glowing like molten fire. Zaretha had faced countless battles, but she had never seen anything quite like this. Hundreds of ships, perfectly coordinated, closing in with deadly precision. Elias remained calm, his hands steady on the controls. "We can use the field," he said. "Not just for cover, but as a weapon. They won't expect it." Zaretha frowned. A weapon. She had expected brute force missiles or energy beams. Instead, this human suggested turning natural obstacles into tools. "Explain," she demanded. He pointed to a cluster of massive asteroids. "These aren't just rocks. Their gravity fields are unstable. If we guide the enemy ships into the right positions, the field can pull them into collisions. They won't fire, they won't survive, but we won't destroy them directly. Less energy, less risk to us, more chance to survive." Zaretha's eyes widened. Clever, audacious, and risky. But it made sense. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but sometimes unpredictability was the greatest weapon. "Very well," she said. "Do it your way, but if it fails—" "It won't fail," Elias said simply. The fleet moved closer, unaware of the trap that awaited them. Zaretha guided her ship to flank the enemy, and Elias took the lead, piloting the Dauntless with grace and precision. His movements were calculated, each one designed to maximize the chance of success. "Keep steady," he said. "Now divert the largest asteroid into the path of their lead ship." Zaretha executed the maneuver, her ship's thrusters straining against the mass. The asteroid shifted, and the enemy's lead ship collided with it. The explosion was violent but controlled. A chain reaction began, and soon multiple ships were caught in the debris. The remaining fleet faltered, confused by the sudden chaos. Zaretha felt a rush of exhilaration. She had expected death, a brutal fight against an unstoppable enemy. Instead, she was witnessing something remarkable, a human turning the battlefield itself into an ally. But there was no time to celebrate. The enemy adapted quickly, redirecting their forces. "They're regrouping," Zaretha warned. Elias nodded. "Then we adapt too. Watch closely." He guided her ship through a narrow gap in the asteroids, a passage so tight that Zaretha's first instinct was to panic. But Elias moved with confidence, weaving through debris, leading her ship safely behind the enemy. He activated a sequence on his console that emitted a high-frequency pulse, interfering with the enemy's sensors. Ships that once seemed unstoppable now struggled to navigate the field. Zaretha's mind raced. She had relied on raw power and precision in every battle, but Elias relied on strategy, creativity, and understanding the environment. He didn't just fight, he thought, planned, and adapted. As they pursued the retreating enemy, Elias spoke quietly. Humans have survived countless disasters because we learn fast. We don't just react, we anticipate. We find patterns and we exploit them. It's not strength that keeps us alive, it's intelligence and cooperation. Zyretha listened, intrigued despite herself. Cooperation, intelligence, these are traits we value, but humans, they seem to embody them in ways we cannot predict. Hours passed as they chased the remaining enemy ships. Zyretha began to understand the human's methods. He observed, calculated, and adjusted. No move was wasted. No action was random. He seemed to anticipate the enemy's responses almost before they made them. During a pause in the battle, they took shelter behind a massive asteroid. Zyretha finally allowed herself to speak openly. "Captain Elias, I admit I underestimated you. I expected recklessness or fear. Instead, I find precision, courage, and something I cannot define." Elias smiled faintly. "You expected death, I know. Most do when they face a human in battle, but death isn't our first option. Survival is, and survival requires more than strength." Zyretha considered his words. The Calther valued strength, discipline, and absolute control, but Elias valued adaptability, courage, and insight. Perhaps that is why humans survive where others fail, she thought. They shared a quiet moment, watching the enemy fleet retreat into the distance. Zyretha's mind replayed the battle, analyzing each move. She realized that every human action she had witnessed had been deliberate, calculated, and remarkably efficient. "You are not just brave," she admitted. "You are extraordinary." Elias shrugged. "Extraordinary, maybe, but any human could do this given the right circumstances. We adapt, we survive, and sometimes we surprise our enemies and our friends." Zyretha felt a strange warmth, an unfamiliar respect. She had faced many opponents, many challenges, and yet none had made her question her beliefs as this human had. He had shown her that power alone was not enough. Intellect, creativity, and courage were equally vital. Suddenly, sensors detected another signal, an unknown object moving rapidly through space. Zyretha's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Elias leaned forward, scanning the readings. "It's unfamiliar, not a Calther ship, not human, but large, fast, and armed." Zyretha's heart pounded. She had expected a single enemy fleet, not a mysterious force appearing out of nowhere. "Prepare for combat," she ordered. "We may face a challenge unlike any before." Elias nodded. "Then let's make it interesting." The object approached rapidly, revealing a massive ship unlike any Zyretha had ever seen. Its design was elegant, almost organic, with flowing curves that seemed impossible in the vacuum of space. Weapons glowed along its surface, but there was an intelligence in its movement, as if it were aware of their presence before they even saw it. Zyretha's instincts screamed caution. "This is beyond anything we've trained for." Elias' eyes gleamed with excitement. "Then we'll learn fast, together." The mysterious ship fired a pulse of energy, slicing through space toward them. Zyretha's ship shook under the impact. Alarms blared, and the crew struggled to maintain control. But Elias remained calm, his hands steady on the controls. He guided their movements with precision, dodging debris and energy blasts alike. "You see," he said calmly, "panic doesn't help. Observation, anticipation, and quick action do." Zyretha could not deny the truth. Humans did not panic. They analyzed, adapted, and acted. She felt a deep respect for this creature who seemed so small, so fragile, yet commanded presence with intelligence alone. Hours turned into a tense standoff. The mysterious ship tested their defenses, probing their tactics. Zyretha realized that Elias was learning from every maneuver, adjusting strategies with astonishing speed. They were not just surviving, they were gaining an advantage. Finally, Elias found a weakness in the ship's pattern. "There," he said, pointing at a small, exposed area in the hull. "If we can disrupt that, we can force it to retreat, or at least slow it down." Zyretha hesitated. The risk was immense, but she trusted the human. She executed his plan, guiding her ship in perfect synchronization with Elias. A pulse of energy struck the weak point, and the mysterious vessel faltered, spinning away into the distance. For the first time in the battle, Zyretha allowed herself to breathe. She looked at Elias, awe and respect mingling in her eyes. "I expected death. What you gave me was," she struggled for the word, "hope." Elias smiled. "Humans survive because we hope, Zyretha, and when we work together, we can turn impossible situations into victories." Zyretha realized something profound. Humans were not just survivors, they were catalysts for change. Where other species relied on fear, strength, or tradition, humans relied on adaptability, intelligence, and courage. And those traits could not be measured by weapons or numbers. As the stars stretched endlessly around them, Xyretha felt a shift within herself. She had come to face an enemy, expecting to assert power and command respect. Instead, she had found an ally, a teacher, and a glimpse of a new way to see the galaxy. The battle was over for now, but Xyretha knew this encounter was only the beginning. The universe was vast, full of challenges and mysteries, and she would face them differently from now on. With Elias by her side, she felt ready for anything. She had expected death, but the human had given her something far greater: understanding, respect, and a new perspective on what it meant to survive and to thrive. The void of space was quiet now, but Xyretha knew it was only the calm before the storm. After the encounter with the mysterious ship, she and Elias had regrouped. Her crew worked feverishly, repairing damage and analyzing what had just happened. Every sensor and console in the command center glowed with activity, but her attention remained fixed on the human who had changed her understanding of the galaxy. Elias leaned against the edge of the command console, calm as ever. "They'll come back," he said simply. Xyretha frowned. "Who, the alien ship?" "No," Elias replied, eyes narrowing. "The fleet that tried to destroy us earlier, they've been watching. They'll strike again, and this time they won't be cautious." She sighed. I had hoped for a peaceful moment, she thought. But peace was rare in the galaxy, and Xyretha had learned to expect conflict. What she did not expect was how she would face it, alongside a human, with a mind and courage unlike any she had known. Hours later, the enemy fleet appeared again, this time larger and more coordinated. The ships were sleek and deadly, their formations perfect. Xyretha's crew tensed, weapons systems ready, but Elias stood calmly at her side. "We can win this," he said quietly. "We just need to think, not just fight." Xyretha glanced at him. "Think, not just fight." That simple phrase carried more power than any weapon. She realized that humans approached challenges differently. Where her people relied on strength and strategy based on numbers, humans relied on creativity, intuition, and courage. The first wave of the enemy fleet opened fire. Explosions lit the darkness of space, shaking both ships. Xyretha's instincts screamed to retaliate with full force, but Elias moved her hands away from some of the weapon's controls. "Not yet," he said. "We need to guide them. Let's use the field again, but smarter this time." Xyretha followed his instructions, navigating through the asteroid belt with precision. Elias pointed out weak spots, calculated trajectories, and anticipated enemy maneuvers. Together, they turned the asteroid field into a trap. Enemy ships collided with debris, while others were forced to retreat under coordinated pressure. Xyretha's crew watched in awe. The human was small, unarmored, and fragile by Calther standards, but he controlled the battle with intelligence, patience, and calm. Every move he made was deliberate, every decision calculated. But the enemy adapted, and soon they discovered the trap. They unleashed a sudden wave of firepower directly at Xyretha's ship. Warning alarms screamed. The ship shook violently as energy blasts tore through the hull. "Brace for impact," Xyretha shouted. Elias remained steady. "Move with me," he commanded. "Trust me." With a skill that seemed almost impossible, he guided her ship through the assault, dodging, weaving, and using the environment to their advantage. Each time the enemy fired, they were already anticipating the counter, turning defense into offense. Xyretha felt a surge of admiration. She had faced countless battles, but never with someone who could turn danger into opportunity with such clarity. This is why humans survive, she realized, not by strength alone, but by thinking, adapting, and never giving up. The battle raged for hours. Xyretha's crew followed Elias' lead, learning his methods, trusting his instincts. They were no longer just soldiers. They became a team, coordinated and effective in ways Xyretha had never seen before. Finally, the enemy flagship appeared. It was massive, armed with weapons that could destroy a fleet in moments. Xyretha's heart raced, but she noticed something about Elias. He did not fear it. Instead, he studied the ship, analyzing every movement, every weapon system. "We can't destroy it directly," he said. "We need to disable it without unnecessary destruction. Follow me." Xyretha nodded. She had expected aggressive action, full-force assault, yet Elias suggested a more intelligent approach. She realized again, humans valued survival and efficiency over destruction. Elias piloted the Dauntless close to the flagship, drawing its attention. Zyretha followed, keeping her ship shielded but ready. They dodged missiles, energy blasts, and laser fire, moving as if the battlefield were an intricate dance. "Now!" Elias shouted. He activated a specialized device he had carried since before the first encounter. A pulse of energy surged toward the flagship, targeting critical systems without harming the crew. The enemy ship shuddered, weapons offline, engines stalling. Zyretha could hardly believe it. The flagship began to drift, helpless and silent. Its crew had expected destruction, but instead they were faced with a choice. Elia's human philosophy had given them mercy, strategy, and opportunity. Zyretha felt a strange warmth in her chest. I expected death. Instead, he offered life and understanding. The enemy ships, seeing their flagship disabled, surrendered one by one. The battlefield grew silent. Zyretha's fleet, once tense and fearful, now moved with purpose and clarity. She looked at Elias, awe and respect shining in her eyes. "You changed this battle," she said. "Not with weapons, but with insight, with intelligence, with courage." Elias smiled. "That's what humans do, Zyretha. We survive by thinking, by learning, and by refusing to give up. Strength alone is never enough." Zyretha realized the truth of his words. Humans were not the strongest physically, but they were the most adaptable, resourceful, and courageous species she had ever encountered. They could survive impossible odds and inspire allies to achieve more than they thought possible. In the quiet aftermath, Zyretha called a meeting with her officers. She spoke of the human's philosophy, the value of intelligence, strategy, and collaboration. Her words shocked her crew, but slowly they understood. The galaxy was full of challenges, and survival would require more than brute force. "Captain Elias Trent has shown us a new way," she said. "A way that values life, courage, and cleverness. We will learn from it, and we will be stronger because of it." Her officers nodded, inspired by the human and the battle they had witnessed. For the first time, Zyretha felt a true sense of hope, not just for her fleet, but for the future of interstellar relations. Humans were not just a species to fear. They were a species to respect, to understand, and perhaps to ally with. Later, as she stood on the observation deck, watching stars stretch endlessly across the void, Zyretha reflected on what had happened. She had expected death when facing a human, expecting arrogance, recklessness, or weakness. Instead, she had found a mind capable of strategy, a heart capable of courage, and a spirit capable of inspiring others. Elias approached quietly. "You're thinking a lot," he said. "I am," she admitted. "I never thought a human could teach me so much about life and war." Elias smiled. "We humans survive not just for ourselves, but for what comes after. We inspire, we create, and sometimes we change the course of history. You've seen that firsthand." Zyretha nodded, understanding the depth of his words. She realized the galaxy was changing, and humans were at the center of that change, not through domination, but through resilience, intelligence, and courage. As the stars glimmered beyond the viewport, Zyretha made a promise to herself. She would carry the lessons she had learned from Elias into every battle, every challenge, every decision. Humans had shown her that strength was more than weapons, and survival was more than numbers. It was about courage, strategy, and the will to persevere against impossible odds. And so she prepared for the future, side by side with the human who had changed everything. She had expected death. Instead, she had been given life, hope, and a vision of a galaxy where humans were not just survivors, but champions, teachers, and allies. The universe was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but Zyretha no longer faced it with fear. With Elias by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. Together, they would face the unknown, turning impossible situations into victories, teaching the galaxy the power of courage, intelligence, and heart. For the first time in her life, Zyretha smiled. Facing a human had not brought death, it had brought transformation. And the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the beginning of something new.